morning. I'd like to formally wish a good morning to all in Harris Hall and those joining us online for joining us for our regular Board of Lane County Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. The inspirational moment today is there's a lot of peace going on the last few days, and I'm excited and hopeful. And my dad used to tell me that blessed are the peacemakers because they get to be called something special. So I hope there's a lot of special peace going on. So good morning, Mr. Mokryski. How are you today, sir?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair.
Good to see you. Is there any adjustments to our agenda?
No.
Any emergency business?
No.
All right, sounds good. Then let's go to our public comment section. I've got a little sheet coming my way. Thank you, Rio. Like we just have a few people for public comment. Public can speak here in Harris Hall or online. The time is limited to 3 minutes, and we'll ask you to watch that clock up there on the screen and stop at the 3-minute mark so we can be fair to all those who come into Harris Hall. You can also submit public comments via our website at least 24 hours in writing before one of our meetings to be included in a weekly packet. When you come to the dais, as I announce you, please state your name, and when you begin, your 3 minutes will begin. First on the list is David Fattenque, and then we'll follow by Chris Cirillo. So David, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm David Fattenque, and I've lived in Lane County for more than 50 years. As some of you know, I worked for 33 years on the staff of the American Civil Liberties Union of Oregon until I retired 10 years ago. I want to emphasize I'm not a lawyer, but in my time with the ACLU, I was involved in many court cases, as well as monitoring state and local legislative proposals that impacted the protections of the Oregon and U.S. constitutions. I'm here today to comment on a request that one of your colleagues made a month ago seeking to prohibit certain comments made by members of the public during your meetings. I believe that such a restriction or prohibition would be clearly unconstitutional. First, some background. Chair Lovell in previous meetings has requested that speakers keep their comments and criticisms of commissioners general and avoid singling out any specific commissioner for criticism. I don't have any objection to the chair encouraging civility by public commenters. But it's important to understand that speakers here also have a constitutional right to ignore that request. Unfortunately, on September 9th, Commissioner Farr appeared to go a step further when he asked the county administrator, as I heard and saw online, to develop a mandatory rule to prohibit members of the public from making any statement that singled out a specific commissioner in a negative fashion for criticism. To my knowledge, the matter has not come up again, but I want to be sure that no such mandatory rule will be considered by the Commission because it would clearly be the type of content-based restriction prohibited by both the federal First Amendment and the free expression guarantee of the Oregon Bill of Rights. In short, as elected officials, you can ask people coming before you to be kind to you and to keep their comments civil, but I don't think you can require it. Our constitutions also protect the right of individuals to petition their government for redress of grievances. Having these public comment periods is an excellent way to encourage such grievances to be brought forward, and I'm glad that you have encouraged people to do that and that you listen to their comments. In this highly polarized time, too many Americans see those who disagree with them as enemies rather than as potential friends who could work together to move us forward as one people. I hope your constituents come to these meetings in that spirit rather than in anger or looking for confrontation. So sure, request that the public be kind to each of you, but please also understand that you can't forbid their comments if they ignore that request. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Cirillo, followed by Janet Ahrens.
Good morning, Commissioners. I want to take a moment this morning to talk to you about why I keep coming here each week. My name is Chris Cirillo, and in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he placed us, humanity, in a world that was newly alive with his goodness, and he invited us to work alongside him to rule over that world justly. He gave one simple boundary, a way to trust his wisdom over ours by avoiding a single tree and its fruit. But we sinned. Adam and Eve took what was forbidden, believing it would make them quote unquote free, and in doing so, fractured the very world that they were meant to care for. Through that first act of defiance, sin entered the story, the stain that now touches everything. And from that moment on, every generation has felt the ache of that brokenness and continued to perpetuate it in our own sins. The result is a world marked both by beauty and ruin. Deep down, if we're honest, we all sense that things are not as they should be. We long for justice. Yet if perfect justice were given to us today, because of our sins, we would be wiped out. And so, out of love, God entered the story himself. He came as the man Jesus, not through ordinary means, but through a miraculous virgin birth, a sign that he carried no stain of that old corruption. His life was sinless. He lived the kind of life we were meant to live, pure, faithful, and completely aligned with the heart of God. He then died a criminal's death on the cross, and it was not to pay for his own guilt, but it was to pay for ours. The scripture says, the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He absorbed the full weight of our failure and carried it on the cross. And in that mysterious exchange, the penalty of our sin was placed upon him, and his righteousness was offered to us. On the third day, he rose from the dead, defeated death, and brought hope. Through his life, death, resurrection, and ascension, we are invited into a new story. When we believe in him and follow him, we are forgiven and made right, adopted as children, and shaped by his Spirit to reflect his good character in the world. This is not about being rescued from the penalty of sin. It's about being renewed from within. Over time, that same gospel grace that saves us also changes us until one day we are freed even from the presence of evil itself. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. He is the only way to God. The Bible says that every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord eventually, but for some it will be too late. The Bible also says that this just God is patient and he desires that no man should perish, but that everyone would come to the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. You see, I'm up here each week because of all of you, because hell is hot and eternity is a long time. God is patient, but he won't wait forever, and your time is short. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janet Ahrens, followed by Wayne Martin. Is Janet in Harsall? I'm here. Oh, you're up next.
This is a rather impromptu decision of mine to come in, and I've been, would like to be, I'm not sure if Commissioner Lovell or Commissioner Senega issued a public statement to county citizens as to the decision to vote with the other commissioners on the Navigation Center funding to the tune of $4.3 million. I believe you have the opportunity or the availability to abstain or vote no besides yes. There are a lot of folks in the North Eugene area that are being plagued by the location and the futility of that navigation center, because as we know, Oregon, through a 1987 legislature under the governorship of Neil Goldschmidt, who was later prosecuted as a pedophile, Oregon became a sanctuary state legislatively. It was not voted by the people. So I see a downhill decline in our livability in the state of Oregon since that date. It's been 50 years. So I'm asking if there was a public statement issued by Commissioners Lovell and Senega as to why perhaps they could have abstained, perhaps a better explanation why you swung in with the other three commissioners on that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne Martin, followed by Mark Siegel.
Good morning, esteemed elected officials. My name is Wayne Martin. I learned on Sunday through a source that the funding for case study employees and counselors at the Navigation Center had been suspended or eliminated, and people lost their jobs with 2 days' notice. I was shocked. I still am. I wonder if it is something that may have been an oversight on the part of the commissioners. I don't know, but I would really appreciate an explanation. We can't, as a homeless advocate since 2012, and one of the founding members of the breakfast service that's going on now, I just want to know if you really did approve of, in an official way, of eliminating the case study management team from that important navigation center. It was put into play by the tax study, which you remember, and I hope you still familiarize yourselves with. That's where I want to leave it to you to provide me some kind of an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Siegel, and then we'll go to our online queue.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning, Commissioners. Thanks for your time. My name is Mark Siegel. I own a tree service business. I have 2 workers who are homeless adjacent, and one of them is staying at the Navigation Center right now. And so it's a new issue to me, but I know that it does good work. I hope that its funding can be there. But okay, so I'm here to speak about Amazon operation that's being developed. And I know that it's the jurisdiction of Eugene City Council. I know that the commissioners deal with a lot of issues and are responsible for a lot, so I don't want to waste time on something that you can't do a lot on, but I think it's going to have a big effect. You know, I live on Alvador Road. I drive my truck and my trailer up that road. I think it should be patrolled better by Lane County sheriffs. I'd love to see more funding from them come out of Amazon's development. If they're coming in with a huge development, are the system charges going to the city or are they going to the county? Can some of them go to the state? Can some of them go to ODOT? So if they have to resurface Highway 99, the money's there. If they have to put up a light at Meadowview or Aubrey, because I find those dangerous intersections to travel on when I'm trying to go home, what's that going to cost? Is that sort of planned out? I think that the cost to the highway infrastructure is going to be pretty darn high, and I know that I feel unsafe on the highways because when I've gotten into trouble, hit by drunk drivers, I haven't had help from the sheriff's department. They have too much that's higher priority. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying I'd love to see some of Amazon's money go to make our highways safer. Also a little bit concerned about the paving of all those acres. Is that going to change drainage, stormwater drainage capability around the Eugene Airport, which is a great asset? We don't want to flood it. Was that studied by ODOT? Was all the trips that are being planned, 2,592, was that studied by ODOT? And did they project any need for costs that the state's going to have to bear? So, you know, these are my major concerns. I know that the city permits it, but I really would like to see the Lane County commissioners consider an ordinance that would develop county system development charges for these kinds of giant warehouse installations. So if they have the money to work with coming from this giant corporation here in the county, we can allocate it to protect public safety on the highways. Amazon jobs are not the best. They have a 30% higher rate of injury for the warehouse workers. Those packages are currently being delivered by other people who are unionized and have better outcomes. So I would love to see the Lane County commissioners have, you know, some time in their, I know, busy schedules, be a seat at the table, get something out of this giant corporation to protect this county, because I've lived here for 40 years. I'm an employer, a homeowner, taxpayer, property owner. I love Lane County, and I want to see it not degraded by Amazon.
Thank you. And now we'll go to our online queue. Jessica, is there anyone waiting to testify online?
Chair, we do not have anyone joining us for virtual public comment.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for all those who came today to give public comment. We heard you, and I've seen my colleagues take good notes, and we will be back on some of those issues that you had mentioned. Our consent calendar is our next item on our agenda. All items listed here are routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. If the discussion is desired, that item would have been removed from the consent calendar and would have been considered separately. Details on each item can be found in the blue links attached to the item descriptions. Vice Chair, do we have a motion?
Yes, Chair, I move to approve the consent calendar for October 14th, 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the consent calendar. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Signify with an aye. Aye, thank you. It's been approved, the consent calendar for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. Thank you. Our next item is item 5, our Community Justice and Rehab Services. It's a order and resolution in the matter of allocating county resources to cover the State of Oregon funding cuts. And I believe, Mr. Mokrahysky, that's your ball, and so go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, I'll invite Christine Moody is here. Do you want to come join me in case you have any questions? I'm going to walk through, you heard a presentation from our various public safety officials on September 9th. So I'm going to walk through some of that and then share with you what our proposal is. As the board is well aware, we've faced a rather significant funding cuts from the state over the last 2 bienniums in particular, through funding that is called the Community Corrections Act. This is state funding that helps to support, that is the primary funding that supports our adult parole and probation function, as well as funds for our sheriff's office for jail beds that are connected to individuals who are on supervision, and in addition to funding for sponsors and other community-based organizations for transitional beds and services for individuals that are re-entering the community from the prison system. So the board on, I will say first, the Public Safety Coordinating Council, which is comprised of various public safety officials throughout Lane County, including our city partners, nonprofit organizations, and state partners, met, and there's a budget committee that is part of that group. That budget committee met 6 times to develop budget recommendations for the allocation of the 2025-27 grant, what is called grant and aid and justice reinvestment funds from the state. The state levels of funding have resulted in a worst-case budget scenario with an approximately $8.1 million shortfall in the biennium over those 2 years, forcing across the system reductions to a level of service that significantly damages the public safety ecosystem. At the board's September 9th, 2025 meeting, the board heard a presentation on the impacts of those state funding cuts, and gave direction to the county administrator to develop supplemental funding strategy to attempt to sustain a semi-functional public safety system and ensure that the Department of Corrections approval of Lane County's Community Corrections Act plan would result in access to the necessary state funds. So what we did is we had a number of meetings that included representatives from the Sheriff's Office, from the District Attorney's Office, from Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services, from Sponsors Incorporated, as well as a circuit court judge that serves on the Public Safety Coordinating Council budget. The question that I posed to that group was, what is necessary, given the funding cuts that are on the table from this $8 million state reduction in the biennium, what is necessary to maintain a minimally functional service level? That was the question posed. And so we had this conversation to try to back into what one-time funds we could identify to plug this hole that the state has created through its underfunding, to add back some of those proposed cuts. So I'll remind the board that what was presented to you on September 9th, the original cuts would force the reduction of approximately $2 million in funding in the Sheriff's Office over the biennium, a result in a reduction in the number of jail beds, the Community Corrections Act work crew, a maintenance specialist. There were approximately 5 positions in the sheriff's office that would be lost. In that conversation with our public safety partners, the sheriff's request was that to maintain a minimally functional public safety system as it relates to the sheriff's office reductions from the state, the sheriff requested that resources of up to $533,112 over the biennium be added back for the loss of the sheriff's work crew and the associated deputy position with that. And so in the proposed add back, we have included funding for that program. In the Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services Department and the Adult Parole and Probation Division, as part of that department, the state funding level would result in a reduction of approximately over $5.1 million to the in the biennium to the division's budget, where the division would lose 14 out of its 35 parole officer positions. That's a 40% cut in those positions. 1 out of its 5 supervisor positions. That's a 20% cut. And 2 out of its 6 total support staff. That's a 33% cut. The cuts would result in 1,000 fewer people being supervised. The mental health unit would be eliminated, which also jeopardizes the federal mental health collaboration grant. Parole and probation would also expect to have deep cuts to supervising the female population, in addition to some of the cuts within the domestic violence and sex offender units. So after the proposed state cuts, 21 parole and probation officers would be left to supervise 2,300 clients. I'll say that again, 21 parole officers to supervise 2,300 individuals on supervision. So again, the question to our Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services team was, what is necessary to maintain a minimally functional service level in that area? And in the first year, the request is for a proposed allocation of $1.37 million to maintain the following services. That would retain 13 positions, which includes 11 parole officer positions, 1 supervisor position, and 1 office assistant. This would restore supervision for 500 clients, approximately half of the reduction. In addition, the mental health unit, domestic violence unit, and sex offender units would be retained. In year 2, the approximate allocation necessary to maintain these services is approximately $2.389 million. So the total allocation being requested from our Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services Adult Parole and Probation totals $3.759 million for the biennium. I'll note that parole and probation is also seeking county opioid settlement funds. This is a separate request that will come before the board to retain an additional 1 parole officer position to maintain the Veterans Treatment Court. That is a program that is slated to be reduced, and this is a critical function in the Veterans Court and a particular concern of our circuit court. So that's a separate, funding is not provided as part of this, but we are seeking to identify opioid funding that could fund that program. Finally, sponsors reentry services. While sponsors is not a Lane County department, we look at the public safety system as a system, and we rely on partners to help maintain critical pieces of that system. And of course, we're all familiar in this organization, in this community, with sponsors and the work that they do to help individuals reentering the community from the prison system to reenter successfully into the community. So sponsors is a key system partner, providing high-quality evidence-based services in the community. The reduction by the state would result in approximately $904,000 in the biennium for the following service reductions, particularly related to cognitive behavioral therapy. The loss of all cognitive behavioral therapy groups would result from the funding cut. In addition, crisis funds would be cut by approximately 65%. Crisis funds are utilized largely to help support individuals on supervision in parole and probation to provide basic needs, reentry needs for anyone on supervision in Lane County. Those could be things such as medication, glasses, phones, bus passes, rental assistance, work clothes, things necessary for individuals as they're seeking to reenter into the community, in addition to the housing stability that's necessary, these other basic reentry needs. Those would be cut by 65%. The mentorship program would be impacted through the reduction of one case manager. That's a 50% reduction in staffing and 130 fewer individuals served over the biennium in that mentorship program. And finally, transitional housing beds, which is of a particular concern and especially here for the board. We heard that in the September 9th discussion. The proposed state reductions would result in the reduction of 20 transitional housing beds for men being reduced. That is effectively 300 fewer men served in the course of a year. The reduction of 11 beds for women, which is 88 fewer women served, and a total of 388 high-risk people would be released from prison without the benefit of housing or ancillary services if these funding cuts were to take effect. So sponsors is requesting funding for the 61 beds that were under contract in the 2023-2025 biennium, plus an additional 5 beds for a total of 66 beds. That combination would be $347,765 in annually, resulting in a request for $695,531 for the biennium to add back those 66 beds. Other service impacts include, that are also planned to be reduced, include mediation and restorative justice programs, public safety coordinating council staffing, and equity in education and facilitation. Reduced staffing also impacts the coordination with victim services, as this requires frequent and timely communications. I want to note that in the last 2 bienniums, that includes the past 2 years and the next 2 years, so over this 4-year period of time, Lane County has invested county resources that total over $10 million in local tax resources to essentially bail out what is a state function. Counties were created across the country and here in Oregon to carry out local services on behalf of state government. There are other counties in Oregon that provide, where the state provides the parole and probation functions. So they are parole and probation officers that are state employees. There is state funding provided for jail beds in the local jail and other reentry services, including Lynn County, the counties to the north and southwest, Lynn and Douglas County. We don't believe that that is the best way, that the best service is provided. The service closest to the people is typically the best service. And so we don't believe that the state is able to provide the level of service that local government is able to provide. But we're in this position where the state has routinely and continues to underfund these critical services, these basic foundational services for our local community. And we continue to have to ask our local taxpayers to fund those services, to bail out that reduction, even though it is a state function, a state service that is required for us to do. So over $10 million in local tax revenue to fill the gap created by the state. And I will say that this is, in anticipation of this question being raised, I will say the board has a financial policy that you have established that requires a 20% minimal reserve in our operating funds, including the general fund. That's where this proposed $4.99 million over the next 2 years would come from, is from reserves. It's one-time money. It's our savings account. So all it is filling a gap for those 2 years. So we're buying 2 years of time. And I would submit to you that the purchase of those 2 years of time to restore not all, but some of those services, we need to use to develop both a legislative strategy as well as a legal strategy to contemplate what the county's options may be in that regard. I think that's everything. And do you have anything you want to add, Christine? So we're recommending the use of, I will say this about the reserve. So we are able to continue to maintain with this allocation the 20%, the minimum 20% reserve that the board has established as its policy for the general fund. But when we also consider the needs of the rural patrol, the expanded rural patrol funding that is expiring at the end of this year, we will be at that 20% reserve with this allocation of $5 million. So we have no additional breathing room. So I just want to emphasize again that in 2 years, we will be back in this position, assuming that the state has not allocated additional funding or there is not some other solution that's been identified. We will again be in the position of having to look at significant cuts to really critical public safety services in our community. And so we have 2 years to figure out how we're going to work with the state to address this long-term funding issue. And with that, Chair, I'll turn it back over to commissioners. We do have representatives from each of the departments that I mentioned, from the Sheriff's Office, Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services, and sponsors here to answer any questions that you may have about the proposed add backs as well as the reductions that continue to be in place.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mokryski. And just for the public, that was a lot of figures and a lot of numbers, and I was hoping we were going with the Cliff Note version, but that was the Cliff Note version. The public needs to know that we're spending about $5 million. We're taking that from our reserves, our county savings account, to bridge this gap that the state has not funded in the services that are necessary for our public service and safety system. That is part of the whole system as a whole. So I wanted to make sure the public knew that one number. With all the other split numbers, it's kind of hard to follow that. This is a problem that the state has asked us to do certain things, and the funds keep dwindling, and then we get ourselves extended out to where we are here. And also, the public needs to know that in 2 years, our backs are against the wall. We will have no other options but to cut or do something drastically different than Band-Aid this, is what we're doing now.
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you. To the board, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. A good summary, Stephen. I'll remind everybody that what you did go fast, but all the numbers are contained in the agenda. If you click on it, if you're watching online, you can get all the numbers without having to try to scramble to write them down. So I'm not going to talk about the numbers, Steve, but you know, we find ourselves, as we often do, finding painful ways to cut services at the local level because of actions by higher level, I'll call them higher level governments, just because that's where they happen to be in terms of geographic area. It's painful. We're cutting essential services. I'm going to use some of your words, Steve. You say we need to develop a legislative as well as a legal strategy to offset the type of cut. That's really what we need to focus on. Otherwise, it's going to continue to come. And I'm not saying we're going to find a way to do it. I think you're identifying brilliant ways today to get us through today. But you're only getting us through today. You know, this is not something that the next Board of Commissioners is going to say, thank you for doing that. They're going to say, well, you know, you passed that down, didn't you? Unless we do something. You know, we have to identify what is the genesis of this? You know, this particular cut, where did it come from? Well, it was legislative action, but why on earth would the legislature take this kind of action knowing, if they do know, what it actually does at the local level? And you've just delineated it. We have people who are not going to be served. We have people who are going to be released from jail before they have a place to go to. We have people who are not going to receive the healing that they need to receive before they can re-enter the community. It's rife, and it really is tangible. And you've identified that, Steve, and I'm not going to dig into that too much more deeply. So we're going to be spending local money, $5 million plus the Veterans Court and other services that we may need to fund. And the legislature is just saying, well, we're going to do this instead of that. What I want to find out, and it's not a question for you right now, but why did the legislature make this decision? Why would our delegation allow this to happen, knowing what it's going to do to the people, the eyes and faces of the people that they see in their community? They have good reasons, I'm sure, but what are those good reasons? What is the genesis of this? Did somebody cause them to make these cuts? Did somebody cause them to pass down the cuts, just shove it off of their desk and onto somebody else's desk? We don't have another desk, Steve. There's nothing much more that I can say other than develop a legislative as well as a legal strategy to offset this type of cut. That's where our focus needs to be. Of course, I think you've done a wonderful is not the right word, but you've done a striking job of getting us through today. And it's just barely getting us through today. I see sponsors are sitting in the back of the room right now, smiling and nodding. Not smiling, that's wrong. Let me see. No, you're not smiling. But the type of services that we do in Lane County are heralded across the state because we are ahead of the curve in so many ways. When Ron Chase started sponsors, and when Paul Solomon advanced it, and when Annie continued it, nobody else is doing anything like it. We need to make sure it stays intact. So back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you. So I was present but remote for the September 9th presentation, and it's even more depressing in person, I have to say. It's really sobering and discouraging that this is where we are. I want to lean in on a couple of things. One is, I would argue we already have a minimal level of service. So when we talk about, what can we do to not lose ground, we're already so far below where we should be in terms of the resource. And it's like in so many areas at Lane County, it's remarkable the service we're able to deliver with the very minimal level of resource we have. And that's in no small part because of our community partners and our inter-organizational partners. I see our DA has come into the room, what the DA's office is able to do, what our sheriff's department is able to do with folks when they are in custody in particular. So when they are released, they are hopefully in better shape or can connect to folks who can help them get there. We are doing everything we can at Lane County. And, when Commissioner Farr talks about how we got here, it wasn't necessarily only a decision made by the most recent legislative session. It's a structural and systemic problem with how the formula that is applied to allocate money to different counties treats counties as if they're apples to apples when they simply are not. Lane County has a much, as you all of us well know from presentations, a much higher number of people with greater acuity of need and the kind of shape that they're in by the time they enter the criminal justice system. And so it is more expensive to care for them because of these structural problems. I also see our policy director here, and I know this idea of legislative fixes, but I know what some of those look like. Some of it is direct allocation, but some of it is fixing this formula. It really is a structural problem. That's sort of when you say what's the genesis, that's where it is. I'm supportive of this solution to bias the time to try to work with the legislature, but we're really sort of eating our seed corn when we start dipping into reserves for operational funding for basic services, and that's concerning, but I don't see another option at this time. So I am supportive of what's in front of us, but I don't do it lightly. We also can't ignore that when we make cuts and reduce service levels in one area, they just show up as often increased costs in other areas. So, we're just looking at this one department and this one suite of programs and bucket of work, but it's going to come back somewhere else, sort of to bite us. I also want to comment that these reduced service levels impact everyone's safety in the community, but they also increase the workload for the staff that remains. If you would say that number again about the number of people on supervision relative to case managers, I think it's 2,300 individuals on supervision for what would be 20, Greg's behind you, 21 remaining officers doing the supervision. That's a remarkably heavy load to ask our employees to carry. So this is very, very sobering, very concerning. I will say in the memo, you described the funding shortfall as catastrophic. I don't think that's a hyperbole to use that word. And I am very interested moving forward, not only in what some of the legislative strategies are, because we've talked about those, but when you say legal strategies, there's a distinction and there's a reason that word is used separately from legislative, and I'm very curious to learn more about what some of those opportunities might be. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Buck, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. You had mentioned near the end regarding the reserves, because you anticipated questions regarding the reserves. So you had stated that with the 4.99 million request that we have in front of us, and you also mentioned the rural sheriff's patrol, and I'm not sure if you meant that that would be extended and still, and we would still be able to maintain the 20% reserves, because we do know that those rural patrols will be ending soon. So in that extension, can you talk a little bit more about what kind of extension you're thinking of there?
Well, Committee Chair and Commissioner, we're still identifying what that would look like, but we are eyeing one-time reserves as a potential source for a period of time to extend the expanded patrol that was put in place by the board in roughly 2020, 2021. That was a 5-year plan for expanded patrol that was something in the range of $12 million, I believe. We don't have the ability to fund another 5 years of that expanded patrol, but we're eyeing 1 to 2 years of expansion with the use of one-time funds, again, with the idea that we're going to have to develop it. You know, you have a public safety funding task force that was created, that brought forward recommendations. The board has been having discussions. We have monthly work sessions with commissioners. We have a team that's meeting on advancing those conversations. So we're, you know, again, when we look at use of one-time reserves, we recognize that, you know, one-time reserves really should not be used for operational purposes unless you're buying time to, it's a bridge to a longer-term strategy. And so that's what we're proposing here is one-time funding to buy 2 years, which is a bridge to try to get towards a longer-term solution. And then in the case of the expanded rural patrol, that will be eyeing 1 to 2 years of extension of that with one-time reserves, again, with the idea that we'll have 1 to 2 years to build a longer-term funding strategy for that. Otherwise, that program will go away. So if we make that both of those assumptions, as well as contract negotiations with the sheriff's union, the deputies union, the cost of that, those 3 things together will exhaust any available reserves above the 20% minimal.
Has there been a time in the past where we've had to go below the 20% reserve mark?
Commissioner Buck, so the 20% is a newer percentage for us. So that was, we changed our policy, I think it was about in 2016, 2017, to go up to the 20%. We used to be a lower reserve, more like 10%, which actually does not give you enough cash flow because you'll remember in the general fund, we wait for that property tax revenue, which is the largest revenue source, and that doesn't come into November, December. So we would end up with some one-time carrying over that kind of carried us through, but we said, hey, we need to be more proactive about this and actually put our minimum reserve at the minimum 20% that Government Finance Officers Association recommends. So we have definitely been lower than 20% before. Even in the years when we had the large reductions, whatever our reserve policy was, I've never seen the board dip below for too long. Now, I will say that part of the 20%, 3% of that amount is what we call a service stabilization reserve. And in Lane Manual, we've designated some economic conditions that should be in place if the board really wanted to tap that 3%. It's more around what unemployment rates look like, what does the housing market look like, some of the things that show a temporary situation like Steve is mentioning where we just need a bridge for a couple of years. So even in your policy, you really could use some of that 3% if there was crisis type of level, but yeah, that cash flow alone requires us to keep the 17 at least.
I will note just that we are in this, I would argue, really unprecedented time with the number of funding reductions that we're facing at one time. We've historically in Lane County dealt with challenges because of our artificially low property tax rate that we talk about. So we always had a lot of timber funding. Timber funding goes away and we have this really low property tax rate that we're stuck with that is underfunding a lot of these core services that we're talking about. That's been a historical issue we've dealt with forever. What is newer is the reductions happening at the federal and state level, because we've actually seen expansion in a lot of places of services through developmental disabilities and public health and in some cases mental health services, in some cases shelter beds, in physical health. You know, we went in 2014 from 3 health clinics to previously to today 9 clinics. We've had to close 2 of those now. So we're just seeing that is different. The landscape is different. And when we talk about catastrophe, I mean, I don't mean to be too dramatic, but if ever there was a time to be dramatic, I think now is it. Because it feels like there's a cascade of reductions happening in all the places. 60% of our budget in Lane County is federal and state dollars. We're heavily reliant on federal and state resources to provide our services. So I just say that in the context of, you know, reserves aren't going to bail us out from all of that, but it is a time that the board is going to want to have the ability, and that's what you're using these for, is really these funds are going towards basic public safety services for a short period of time.
I appreciate that, because at our last meeting when we discussed this, one of my concerns was that we are going to have other competing departments come forward and request funding because of different kinds of budget cuts that we're seeing. At the state level, clearly, the last legislative cycle was very challenging budget-wise, and going into the next session will be just as challenging, if not more so. And we're going to have to really search and figure out how much we're going to have available for the different departments that I know that will be coming forward. We know that Human Services is having a huge gap at the moment as well, and I fully expect them to come and report to us about their needs in addition. And this is all general fund dollars that we're talking about. All the reserves are in the general fund, and it's clearly unsustainable. So we've had parole and probation specifically come to us in the past, as you mentioned, $10 million that we've already spent trying to bridge gaps, trying to buy some time. And unfortunately, now we're seeing deeper and deeper cuts. So it's really just a Band-Aid when bleeding is still occurring. It's completely unsustainable. We have to advocate as much as we possibly can, knowing that there are tough decisions that are going to be happening at the state level as well. And we're going to be tested on our priorities throughout this upcoming year. It's going to be very, very challenging. When I first came on board as commissioner, we were arguably in a very good spot. Then COVID hit, and we had a lot of ARPA money going on, but those times have long gone, and there's an obvious correction that's occurring, but also a very negative economic forecast for the state of Oregon that is just compiling onto the same problem that we're foreseeing. Christine, please.
Just on your note of the reserves, maybe just a note for the public as well. How does the general fund have the level of reserves that it does right now? Because it might be then assumed, well, why wouldn't it have additional in a few years? This is COVID money. This is ARPA money that the county has been very diligent and careful about spending that extra cash that we received, really because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so wanted to be really careful as we came out of the pandemic, and so that is serving us well right now, but that is what the reserves are from, and so they will not build up in this way. That was a pretty large influx of additional resources to the county, as you just noted.
So we're not seeing additional funding each year coming in to rebuild those kinds of reserves?
Just small amounts. It's, what we're going to build up is just if revenue comes in just a little bit higher, which usually if property tax came in just a little bit higher or a department underspent a little, it's a much smaller number. So you can end up with a little excess, but not in this way.
And I will note that one of the things we've done in recent budget years is we've increased what we call vacancy variance. This is our kind of hedge for vacant positions, transition that happens throughout the course of the year. We've increased that from, I think we started at 2.5%. Last fiscal year, we were 5.5%, which means we're assuming our operating budget and our expenditures, we assume that savings. So it creates a tighter budget, right? It means that there's less opportunity for additional funds when revenues may come in higher than normal. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Commissioner Trieger, is that a question?
On that point, when you talk about the vacancy variance, we've been eliminating vacant positions as a strategy to reduce the budget overall. So how does that impact?
Creates a tighter budget.
Right, it just makes it so it's just another place where we can't anticipate we might have some
There's not a lot of
wiggle room. Yeah, okay. Just making sure I was tracking that. Thank you.
Vice Chair, anything to add?
Yeah. Great presentation, Steve. I had a little conversation with Mr. Rickoff. I knew this was going to be tough, and we do have our work cut out for you because, as we've spoken in the past, we had a meeting with the state to explain our unique situation. Trieger mentioned we have a higher level of people further down the criminal road. That's more expensive. It just is, and we're dealing with that daily. We were basically, in a compassionate way, told you're helping too many people. And really, that's what they said. That was their overall message. So our message is going to have to be that much stronger than that. I mean, it's going to have to be a united front with everybody here. I see Annie Hers in the back, and she smiled a little bit. And I see we have Sheriff Wilkerson and Captain Rice and all the players that are at that table all the time. And it's going to take all of us to move the needle on this. We have been cutting and trimming, and now we're down to bone or removing limbs. It's pretty stark. So thanks for all the hard work. I know it was tough to find that in a reserve that is ever dwindling, but this is the right move at this point to plug a hole in a sinking ship. It's pretty dismal.
Yeah, well put, all my colleagues. It is indeed a catastrophic time, as they say. I think Commissioner Buck hit it right on the head that we're in the future going to be tested on our priorities. I thought that was a really brilliant statement about how we're going to be moving forward, because at some point the public is going to have to decide if their safety is more important than list anything else. You know, like Commissioner Vice Chair said that, we helped a lot of folks that the state may think that we help too many, but at some point we're going to have to decide that as a community, what's more important than our own safety and what are we going to cut? Because at some point, like we said before, someone's going to get their lights turned off. So I just wanted to reiterate for the public too, the Public Safety Task Force is going to be coming forward with what Mr. Mokraski said is a permanent fix, and the citizens are going to have to decide by vote what they're going to decide what's most important. Is their public safety, their own safety more important? Because no one really realizes their public safety is at risk until, of course, they're violated in some way, form, or fashion, and then they realize that it is. And then the last thing I wanted to say too is that, Mr. Mokraski, you said before we had lots of timber resource revenue we were leaning into, and I think that's more important now for us to re-embrace once again. As we know, we've got ourselves back into the Association of Oregon and California Counties, and that organization is currently aggressively litigating to get more timber revenue to the counties. Just for the public's sake, we produce and grow 1.1 billion board feet of timber material a year that we should harvest and could harvest sustainably, but we only harvest about 180 million board feet a year. So you look at the great disparity of how much we are growing every year in the community and the region that we are blessed with, and how much we are not harvesting, which gives us obviously more material to burn. So I would just encourage the public to keep abreast of the timber issues and to help us lean into those so that we can extract all the revenue that's due us and due our area and our geography, because that's what we grow here. Wine, timber, filberts, and grass seed. That's what we grow here. So we should try to get the revenue on all of those that we can. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Just two very last points that I want to make. And Christine Moody, you brought it up that before 2017 we didn't have this level of reserve. I want to point out that that's been a hallmark of your working with Steve Mokraski since Steve was hired to build our reserves, and not just that, to pay off debt, to get us in a position where today we can do this extreme act. 10 years ago, we couldn't do it. And only the oldest among us, with you as an exception, remember those days, that we didn't have any extra in those days. And it's been a lot of work in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to get us to the point where we have this flexibility. Alas, that we're using it. The last thing I'll mention is that timber harvest, I think the big, beautiful bill made it so that all timber dollars go to the federal government.
That's right.
We don't get any of it.
That's what we're fighting for.
Correct.
All right, just, hey, one last question I have for you, Ms. Moody. If we were in normal times, what would it take for us to build back $5 million in our reserves, just under normal circumstances? I mean, is that anything we can answer to the public right now? Because if most of our money that we have there's COVID or, ARPA money, it kind of came out of the ordinary, I guess you could say.
Right. I mean, it could take 5 to 7 years, again, depending on if expenses are coming in a little low and your revenue's growing a little bit. So it has to be good economic times at that point too, to have, we might see, between 700,000, $1 million a year excess carrying forward. But then needs come up. So it depends on what's happening at the time.
All right, good perspective. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I'm in support of this. I'm looking for a motion on this matter. Vice Chair?
Chair, I move to approve order and resolution 2510-1405 in the matter of allocating county resources to cover the state of Oregon funding cuts to the Community Corrections Grant and Aid and Justice Reinvestment Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair to move approval allocating county resources to cover the state of Oregon funding cuts to the Community Corrections Act Grant in Aid and Justice Reinvestment Program for the 25-27 biennium, to delegate the authority of the county administrator to sign the related contracts and amendments, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Good work, great information. Our next item is a county administration item. We have a report in the matter of presenting information on the City of Cottage Grove's urban renewal plan. And with us is our Economic Development Manager, Jason Harris, and he has a array of folks joining him. And Jason, when you're ready, I'll let you introduce your panel.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. I'm Jason Harris, Lane County's Community Economic Development Manager, and I'm joined here this morning by the Cottage Grove Counselor and Chair of their Urban Renewal District, Councilor Irvin, and their consultant, Elaine Howard. They are here to present an update on Cottage Grove's urban renewal plan. Cottage Grove recently re-established their urban renewal agency and have interest in establishing an urban renewal district in downtown Cottage Grove in the commercial districts. So with that, I'll transition to the chair and counselor.
Mr. Harris. Morning, Chair and Commissioners. We are most evidently in the same situation as the previous item that you've discussed here highlights. It is difficult times financially. We, as a city of Cottage Grove, are up against shortening a gap in our budget. And we can do that with cuts or by raising revenue. In these times, it focuses our efforts and our priorities. And we've identified that we're going to take on the fight of developing. We're going to aim at increasing revenue by bringing in a new tax base. We have to do so in a way that honors our history, preserves our culture, but ushers in the new Cottage Grove. We are building on some huge wins, revitalized downtown Main Street, and there are other things waiting in the wings that are very positive and that will fuel this. But we want to take this opportunity and this time to bring up plans that have been in the works for a number of years, that much work, much thought has been brought to bear. And now is the time to build on those successes and to raise the bar and actually address our funding gaps. There are many You guys are well aware of what we face, as you face many of the same issues: public safety, infrastructure, city services. So with that, I'd like to present Elaine Howard with Elaine Howard Consulting to give you a preview of the plan as it sits right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Elaine Howard with Elaine Howard Consulting. I've worked on this plan with the City of Cottage Grove with Tiberius Solutions, who does all of the financial work. I began working with the City of Cottage Grove about 7 years ago, where we started talking about the need to do this, but have been unable to move ahead. In 2024, we did a feasibility study for the city, and at that point, the city directed us to move ahead with the preparation and review of an urban renewal plan. What I'll go through today is the proposed Cottage Grove urban renewal area, just a very short crash course on urban renewal, what the next steps would be for this particular plan, and then any questions that you might have. This is the draft boundary. As the agency chair mentioned, it is basically the commercial areas in Cottage Grove, so the downtown area, and then coming out the commercial strip towards the freeway. Next. Every urban renewal plan has a maximum indebtedness. In Oregon, maximum indebtedness is the limiting factor of urban renewal. It's not a time frame, it's an amount of maximum indebtedness. We prepared the potential maximum indebtedness figure by looking at an estimated 30-year time frame for an urban renewal plan. So the maximum indebtedness that would be established if this plan is adopted is $65,400,000. That would be the total amount of money that the Urban Renewal Agency could spend on projects, programs, and administration over the life, the 30-year life projection of the urban renewal area. That top number there, net TIF, is a different and higher number than the maximum indebtedness. That is the total amount of revenues that would need to be collected from all of the different taxing districts, including the City of Cottage Grove itself, because you typically in an urban renewal area go out for a bond or incur long-term debt. The interest payments on that long-term debt are not counted against maximum indebtedness per the definition of the statute, but it is money that has to be collected. So we estimated that the total tax revenues, or the impacts or contributions from all of the taxing districts, would be about $75 million. In urban renewal, the money comes in fairly slowly in the beginning of any urban renewal area because it's predicated usually just on that 3% increase in taxes over the frozen base. So that in years 1 through 5 would be about 1.8 million, and it goes up as it every 5 years. You can see there's some places in those 5 years where it goes down a little bit, and that's because in the prior 5-year time period, we're able to predict that they'll sell a bond or place a bond, and that bond will give them some extra money, and then some of the following years, they'll just be working off of direct tax increment revenues until they have enough money to debt service a bond again. So these numbers total to that $75 million, which is the estimated impact on all of the taxing districts. When you develop an urban renewal plan, you develop projects that go within that plan. Those projects can be changed over the life of the plan through an amendment to the plan. But you start out with a list of projects, and the City of Cottage Grove has gone through mostly their infrastructure needs within this area. So they have, you can look at the transportation category, which is 31% of the proposed funding, because they need to be able to improve the streets within that entire urban renewal area. When you look at the utilities, that's another 14%. So that's saying when we do new streets, we're also going to upgrade and do the utilities that will go with those streets. part of what the agency chair mentioned was economic development and our development loan program. The way you increase your funding in an urban renewal area is by improving your existing building stock and by encouraging new development within that area. That will increase the tax base for everybody. It will provide the funding to be able to do these other projects, but also as the urban renewal area ends, it provides increased funding to all of the different taxing districts. Next slide. For a city the size of Cottage Grove, they may have up to 25% of their assessed value and 25% of their acreage in an urban renewal area. In this area, the proposed area, it's about 10.1%. That we're going to do a small change to the plan, so that's going to go up a little bit before it's finally adopted because we're going to put the fire station into the plan boundary. The assessed value is 7%. So if you're looking at the total assessed value of the city of Cottage Grove, 93% of their assessed value will continue giving all of their growth to the city and to the different taxing districts. The only amount of assessed value that will be going to this urban renewal area is that 7% of that total 100% assessed value. Slide. The impacts to the taxing district shown in the formal report, and as we're going through now what's called the consultant confer process, and as we get input from taxing districts or other people, we're able to update that formal report that was provided to you. In that update, we're going to add a table that shows what that 3% growth would be, because that's the true impact to the taxing districts. That's about what the city has been growing historically, that if new infrastructure and new development incentives aren't provided, that's what we would expect it to grow in the future. So what we have here is what that 3% growth would be over that 30-year time period. So that impact to Lane County itself would be about $3.25 million over that 30-year time period. If they're able to incentivize new growth, as urban renewal does, that's why we do urban renewal, that would be almost double. And that extra amount comes off that extra growth that happens due to the ability of urban renewal to cause growth within the area. So that would be about 6.3. You can see the city of Cottage Grove is most impacted by the potential urban renewal area, and they understand that impact and understand that their budget, the city's budget, will have an impact that will, they'll be managing this, both the city budget and the agency budget. The agency is made up of the city council and mayor in the city of Cottage Grove. Next. This shows that 3% concept that we just talked about. The yellow gold hatch shows that revenue that would be foregone to the taxing districts, just that 3% amount. If growth occurs at the rate that we anticipate it will, it shows you how much additional taxes you will be able to get in the future off of the urban renewal area. And it showed that gold shows you the ability to invest more money within the area and what happens because of your ability to invest more within that area. Next. The next steps in this project, they've gone to the agency. The agency authorized sending it out to the taxing districts. That's why we're here with you. The county commission's role is really just to listen and provide input. None of the taxing districts get a vote on new urban renewal plans. That decision is made by the city council itself. It has to go to the planning commission, and that is Wednesday, tomorrow night, for review of its conformance to the comprehensive plan. And then the city council will have a hearing and a vote on a non-emergency ordinance. That non-emergency ordinance takes 30 days to go into effect. During the consultant confer process, if any taxing district sends any written correspondence to the city council about the potential plan, the city council must, in considering the ordinance, respond directly, either accept, reject, or modify any input from a taxing district. So if you decide you want to provide any written input, please provide that. We sent a letter to you notifying you of that date to receive the input. Please do that, and the city council will consider that in their deliberations on the ordinance. And that, this just shows a timeline of how we've been working on this. Again, we started in 2024, looking at the feasibility study, took that feasibility study and have been moving forward since then to get to the point that we are now.
That awkward silence. If anybody wants to add anything else, great. Thank you, Ms. Howard. Appreciate that presentation very much. Chair Greg, anything else to add?
Well, I just want to state that we view this as a partnership, as not just us. We're not operating in a vacuum here. We are interdependent on the county and the broader region, and so we do cover your input and for assured success going forward. And the same goes with all these taxing districts. We want to move forward together.
Great, thank you. Board, Mr. Farr, please.
Well, I'll start with just a few words, but first I'd like to recognize Faye Stewart, former county commissioner, who sat in this seat for a lot of years, longer than I have. And Faye now works with Cottage Grove and is no small part of the presentation that's presented to us. So welcome, Faye. You know, urban renewal excites me. It can be misused, it can be abused. You know, in the 1970s, when I first moved to the city of Eugene, they were knocking down all the buildings downtown. 112 buildings were knocked down for urban renewal. We built a pedestrian mall, which failed. But it was not for lack of trying. Urban renewal can produce wonderful things. I sat for 10 years on the Urban Renewal Agency with the city of Eugene as a city councilor. And during that time, we built the Eugene Library through urban renewal. Demolished the Sears building and built what is in its place right now, which is predominantly student housing. Good things happened with urban renewal. In Bethel, back in the late 60s, early 70s, urban renewal was used for building housing. Lots and lots and lots of housing in Bethel. So, you know, urban renewal is a wonderful thing, and I look at this plan that you've put forward, and I welcome it with open arms personally, because I believe, you know, you've identified the impact to local taxing districts. That's the first thing we look at is, what is it going to do to the schools? You know, what's it going to do to the fire district? And really, there is an impact on taxes, but as the improvements occur, the impact is mitigated by future improvements that last forever if it's done right. And I have a strong feeling that because of the presentation, because of the work that's being put into this, that Cottage Grove is going to do it right. I love your town, man. I love Cottage Grove. I like going down there because I feel like I'm stepping back in time because of the downtown area is so well preserved. It's beautiful down there. Bravo. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I welcome this once again with open arms. Urban renewal can be a wonderful thing, can be destructive. I believe that we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I appreciate those words, Commissioner Farr. We've got the whole Cottage Grove crew here today, and I love it. I also wanted to recognize Councilor Maraday and prior Councilor Dreher in the audience as well. I appreciate you all coming out, and always good to see my predecessor, Commissioner Stewart. There's a lot of good stuff happening in Cottage Grove right now, even though we talked pretty intensely earlier about budget cuts that are affecting all of us, including our smaller cities. You're just moving one step in front of the other every single day. The street in downtown is coming along, and it looks fabulous. I know you're not quite done, but it's one step towards additional urban renewal, such as this particular project. And although you mentioned that work started in 2024, you also mentioned that this conversation and the work really has been occurring for many, many years. And I know that Commissioner Stewart, had a large part in that, and the counselors have been talking about it for some time. I'm absolutely supportive of the project. I know that the planning has occurred in the past, and there's not a rush to any particular project. But when you, as a city, have developed and added areas in which to include more housing or industrial space or manufacturing space, it has been so successful. And so the trust in this particular project is so high. So I appreciate you coming out and presenting to us, and I'm certainly supportive and very interested in seeing what develops as a result of moving forward.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Trigger?
Sure, sorry, I was looking for one of the slides, but that's fine. I am supportive of the project. Thank you for the presentation. Congratulations on getting to this point in this work. I trust the local community to know what it needs and to understand its own capacity for voters to support these kinds of initiatives. And so I'm supportive. I know we're not making any decisions today. We're just getting information. On the county side, I just want to recognize, and I think later today we're going to meet our new clerk, the number of unique ballots each time a new taxing district is added somewhere in Lane County does present more work. Lane County performs that work on behalf of every resident in Lane County, and we do not collect any associated administrative fee to help offset the cost to Lane County for performing that function for all 16 school districts, all 12 cities, all the library districts, parks districts, emergency ambulance and fire districts and so on. And so I'm just cognizant, looking internally to our organization, our responsibilities about capacity to deliver services and the commensurate resources to do it. It adds another complexity to the ballot for our elections folks and for our assessment taxation team. And so, that's just I'm aware of that. It in no way affects my support for the project or my interest in learning more about it moving forward, but it's important, particularly in light of the presentation we had on the previous item, that we remember that doing business, there's cost to doing business. And this will add a little bit of cost to Lane County for doing our business in support of the local community. Thank you again for the presentation. I look forward to seeing how this moves forward.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair?
Yes. Thank you. This is exciting stuff. And there's not a doubt in my mind it's going to work in Cottage Grove. Everybody you talk to that's in the business or building industry looks at Cottage Grove as setting the model. You guys are solution oriented. Permits are coming out the door, and people think outside the box. I see we have Director Amber Bell in the back there, and we're going to talk about that, but we're going to be losing her, and I hope that as we're losing her, I know she's leaving to find those kind of solutions in the next place she's going. And every time I speak with Eric Mongan, I think of these kind of projects. He's the guy that he's always a yes. How can we get there? What direction should we head? And more of that thinking outside the box. So I'm really excited for this. I can't wait for you guys to make the first trail, and hopefully other people can get on board and see what this can do. As Commissioner Farr was talking about different urban renewal projects, that's really how I'm going to look at Springfield, because I don't quite have the amount of time seeing these projects as Commissioner Farr has, but I remember when Springfield wasn't. And now you look at Springfield. Springfield's doing great downtown. So I look forward to Cottage Grove being on that list. This is exciting.
Thank you. I'm excited as well. I remember when Len Blackstone came to me in 2016 and says, oh my gosh, I have this old crummy bank building in downtown Cottage Grove, and I've seen you've done that once in downtown Springfield. How did you do it? And the look on his face when I told him how to do it, I thought he was going to back out, but I'm sure glad he persevered, because Len and I have a lot of history together. We used to photograph raw chicken together when I was a commercial photographer and he was an advertising executive, so we go way back. But I'm excited about this. Chair Greg, you said something that I think should be a mission statement to this. You said, we've identified revenue issues by taking on the fight of developing, bringing in a new tax base by honoring history, culture, and ushering in a new Cottage Grove. I can't think of a better mission statement to proceed on. I do love the fact that this addresses the infrastructure and street improvements, because in developing downtown Springfield over the last 10 years, I have to tell you, that's one of our biggest hurdles is infrastructure. A lot of that stuff's been put into place back in the timber days. It was financed by Joe Timberman, who had a few extra money and dropped in a water line that was cast iron, and it's been working perfectly for 80 years now. And so, you know, now we have an extra demand on it, and so I appreciate the fact that you're putting that as part of this project. I also loved on page 45 when you made mention of a hotel project down there. I thought that was very forward thinking. I think that just you and your council people and your colleagues just going forward with a renewal idea for tax base didn't come with a really great idea, and I think that's a really great idea. Downtown Springfield, I think there still needs some things there, and a boutique hotel is one of those, because people want to stay near where they tour. You have bikes, you have covered bridges, you have the lakes, all the stuff you have down there, and I think that's just a wonderful idea. I'm also interested in seeing how you cobble up the needed land. What developers or what owners of that land are now going to be willing to sell you that undeveloped land when you have such a great renewal idea. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. But also on page 17, you mentioned something too that I want to ask a question on. You said you want to highlight and preserve the historic downtown in accordance with the appropriate existing downtown standards and Historic Preservation Commission. And so I want to ask you, we had a situation in one of our developments with the Springfield Historic Preservation Committee, and we wanted to put some bifold doors in the front of a little grocery store to make it look, you know, New York style sidewalky, right? And so the building was a historic building, and we had to go way back in history. Fortunately, our architect was a great sleuth at that. And we had to prove that back in the day, there was an auto shop in that location that had a garage door there. And that's how we were able to put those really nice bifold doors that we wanted aesthetically for that supermarket. So I'm wondering, the question I have is how much control has been thought about or given to the Historic Preservation Commission in future development standards and approvals? Have you thought about that, or is there some conversations with that? I'd like to hear that, because I'm excited. Oh, good. Yeah. Ex-Commissioner Stewart's coming forward to answer that question.
Almost made it through.
Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. Commissioner Laval, our historic district has a historic overlay, and it has criteria and codes that govern the development. Much of it is presented to the Oregon Historical Society, SHPO, right? And also in conjunction with our preservation committee, they review the plans to make sure that the historic intent is maintained in the structures. Yes, creativity, and that's what I appreciate about the staff at the City of Cottage Grove. We do really try to find a way to get to yes, as you just explained how you had to get to yes. We work as diligently as we can to try to meet the intent of what the developer wants to do, but also be mindful that we do have historical codes that we need to honor too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And I'm sure you'll do a great job at that. That's a wonderful idea and a wonderful standard to proceed from. Any other comments from the board? Any additional comments from the staff? Mr. Harris, you've been awful quiet this morning. Didn't want to put you under the bus there.
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, thank you for the report. We look forward to going forward and what happens down in Cottage Grove. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is our item B from our county administration, is the discussion of the Oregon State University Extension Service and levy options and information. It's per a board assignment that was given just in August of this last year. And Richard Riggs, the Regional Director, Western Region for Oregon State University Extension Service, is coming forward along with Ms. Emily. I didn't catch your last name.
LaVon.
Ah, LaVon. All right, well, good. Anytime you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chair Lovell and Commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning and talk about the work that we've done over the last almost 5 years with the tax levy that was passed in 2021 and the work we anticipate doing after the 2026 levy, because I'm hopeful that you'll refer us to the ballot, we'll get approved by the voters and move forward another 5 years with 2026. And Emily LaFawn is our community engagement specialist. She was one of the persons that was identified in our needs assessment after we passed the 2021 levy. We went across the county, asked different community what they wanted. They said, we want to know a lot more about extension and the work you do. A community engagement specialist like Emily goes out in every single community, whether they're incorporated or not, talks about engagement, talks about how people can get involved with OSU and we can be more involved in the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily and let her do most of the talking.
Good morning. Thank you for having us today. Okay, so just a quick little, we're right in your neighborhood. We are right downtown over here at 10th and Jefferson. We rent out what used to be the Kaufman House. We rent that from the city, and those are just some images with what we do around our building. So, yeah, Extension provides information and expertise to help meet local challenges and help every Oregonian thrive. We're out there in the field helping people get the education they need where it's practical and needed the most. So just a bit of history. We've been in existence since 1958 through the Morrill Act, and specific land is for extension use and research. So all land sea grant institutions have an extension service. And let's see, provide practical education in the field. We help individuals and families thrive. We use science-based education and research to bring out to people in the community. Many of our offerings are free or at minimal cost to those who want to participate in our programming. And we're open to everyone, all ages, genders, nationalities, religions, etc. We try to do inclusive learning, and we're very community-based. Just an image of the different counties that have extension services in them, so almost every county in Oregon has it. So yeah, extension programming responds to community priorities based on what people need and what we think would be beneficial for all of our Oregonians. So just a few quick little facts. We have 16 employees. Some cover multiple counties. They'll cover Lynn, Lane, and Benton, and some travel all throughout areas depending on what their expertise area is. We have more than 400 volunteers through all of our programs. We cover the entire county, not just Eugene and Springfield, and I think a lot of people need to know that we are out everywhere in the entire county. Try to get even into the incorporated cities and just everywhere we can possibly be.
We, with that, under the new monies that came in 2021, we were able to open satellite offices out in Florence to serve the Siuslaw Basin. We have somebody who's there full-time, and then up in Oak Ridge as well. And we have an office there just off of, it's First Street, it's not Main Street. That's where I grew up.
So yeah, and then we are one of the few counties in Oregon Extension who does operate off a tax levy. Other extension offices have a tax service district, which we are hoping to get to in 2031 after this next 5-year levy. And yeah, just some programs are offered. We have 4-H youth development, master gardeners, master food preservers, small farms, forestry, nutrition, and community health. We have Juntos and Open Campus, and collaborations in Benton and Lynn counties for other various programming. Oh, sorry. So this is based on the 2024 information from our last progress report, basically, talking to our employees. So we have, in all of Oregon, there's been 6,360 Ask Extension responses, and we have 730 of those just in Lane County alone. So that's an option to go online. You can type a question in, and they'll give you an answer based on what your question is. We have 15,445 volunteer hours, which is equivalent to about $500,000 in labor. we have had 1,025 walk-ins, phone calls, and emails just for our master gardeners alone, and that was in the last year. We have 21 classrooms now participating in the embryology program. 7 of those are new in 2025. They've been bringing all the chicks into the classroom and helping like have the kids learn about the embryology and hatching of eggs, and it's been really fun. So we have new 4-H and community health programs in Florence, Oak Ridge, and Elmira and McKenzie. New innovative programs and classes from the Master Gardeners. We have our tree school coming up next weekend, and this cohort is going to be our biggest one yet. So that's pretty cool. And then we have new MFP classes in regions, and more programming over the last 5 years that we've been doing. So let's see, our Lane County operating budget is $1.6 million. The last levy we asked for 0.202.
28 cents.
Thank you,
Or,
sorry.
I'm sorry, 2.8 cents.
Yeah, sorry, math is hard, sorry. And so per $1,000 assessed value on homes. So if assessed like $13.5 for, which equal like $67.5 for 5 years out of taxpayer dollars with the last one. And then we passed with a 70% voter approved rate. So like I said, I just thought this kind of fun little fact is like the last levy at $67.50 per household. It's like a night out for a single day night for the most part. That's over 5 years.
It's about half of a date.
Yeah, right? I know.
Yeah, you need to up your figures.
Depends where you go, I suppose.
I guess. Depends if you want to impress the date, yeah.
That's why we stay home.
Yeah. Okay, so over the past 5 years, we hired 5 new full-time staff. We've had multiple interns, student workers. We've established satellite offices in Florence and Oak Ridge, which Rich already mentioned. We are going to be able to maintain employment of 2 full-time what is the NFP? Nutrition, family?
I don't recall. We lost some of our SNAP employees with the Big Beautiful Bill Act, and we've been able to hire them back because we had some funds from this levy, and now they're doing nutrition work across the county. One of them actually just started today as her first day back as an employee.
And then, so increased program in all areas throughout the county, and we've been able to reach more people. We've increased our volunteers, which directly correlates to saving money in FTE. And added increased programming in regions like McKenzie, Lowell, Elmira, Mapleton, and other remote areas. So we're able to reach remote populations also. Okay, so the first levy was in 2016 at 1.5 cents per 1,000 assessed value on home. So it costs like $3.75 annually per household. The second one, 5 years later, which we talked about, 2.8 cents per $1,000 assessed value. So it costs the average household about $11.50 per year. And in the last 10 years, like I said, we've added essential staffing, increased programs and training opportunities. We've updated the building that we rent. It looks great now inside. It's nice and lively and vibrant, and widen our scope of who we can reach in our county with more rural outreach. So plan for the future. So this is forecasting into 2026 for the May ballot. We are wanting to go from the 2.8 current assessed to 5 cents per value. And that compares with rates in Marion, Jackson, Clackamas, and Washington. And if passed, that'll set us up for the permanent tax district in 2031. So with the new levy funding, we will plan to open a satellite facility in McKenzie area at the McKenzie River Discovery Center. We currently don't have any buildings up there, and we do have programming, especially with 4-H clubs and some other stuff happening up there. And with add additional emergency preparedness resilience programming, our 4-H team has been really good about doing emergency preparedness with youth and adults and getting out into all the communities. And it's been really beneficial to get our name out there and help people that need the emergency preparedness planning. 4-H program focused on natural resource education, additional program support for small farms and forestry, and eventually buy a new building that belongs to us.
We would have to with all that growth in staff.
So, and like I said, this is to, like, we're in a pillar in the community. We have programs like 4-H summer camps, compost and gardening classes, farm tours, pressure gauge testing, gardening advice from master gardeners, 4-H youth development, forestry resources, food preserving, and just so much more. And that's what we have.
Wonderful, thank you. When you said buying another building, I was already online looking at buildings for you. No, I'm kidding. Great idea. It's the way you should do it. To the board, Commissioner Farr.
This is pretty exciting. You know, I remember back in 2015 when you first asked us to support the levy and help pass it. It was coincided with the time you were losing your building, which was on the fairgrounds. And there's a building that would have fallen down very, very soon anyway. But and you rebounded so well. When we helped that, you asked for 1.5 cents back then, and penny and a half, which, you know, toss a coin. But I envisioned what you could do, but I didn't envision anything like this. I didn't envision the many things you could do, and the way that people supported the levy because of the demonstration of your ability to use the pennies very, very wisely. So I'm, of course, in favor of this, but I'd like to point out that your reach into the community goes very, very far. You talk about your Master Gardener program. Well, when Commissioner Trieger and I were at Food for Lane County, that was an integral part of our farm program that helped us get things really ramped up. And if you drive out Coburg Road and see our farm, Grassroots Garden, and then our youth farms, couldn't do it without the Master Gardeners, without their integral approach. Additionally, nutrition services, you're adding people nutrition services that were reduced because of the big, beautiful bill, but you're bringing them back. At Food for Lane County, Commissioner Trieger and I remember we had a nutritionist from OSU Extension Services who helped us. We got some crazy things donated by USDA at the time. Pallets of dried, powdered black beans. What do you do with that? Well, you all helped us figure out what to do with dried black beans. We wrote recipes, delicious recipes that we were able to give the recipes along with the dried black beans, which, and you know, I mean, is that stuff for kids to play with? No, it's great food. So without OSU's Extension Service, we could not have done that. You reach so deep into the community. And while my wife and I met at the University of Oregon 53 years ago, our youngest son went to OSU, Oregon State University, and our oldest son's husband was the Thurgood Marshall Fellow at Oregon State University and is now in a PhD program there. We love OSU, love everything about you, and let's get this thing through again. Now, help me with this. It's a 5-year levy, but we're going out a year early, right?
So our levy will actually, the 5th year will be next year. We passed it in May of 2021, and so May of 2026. And so we're here a little bit early, but just to kind of prime the pump. But we'll be back probably January, February timeframe to ask to be officially referred to the May 2026 ballot.
And early is good. We've demonstrated that with our public safety levy, for instance. So getting in early, just overlapping rather than butting up against is a good thing. So we're on. I'm on. Let's go.
Commissioner Trieger.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm also supportive. I think, as Commissioner Farr mentioned, your reach goes far into the community. I think that's a lot of why it got such good support at the ballot and then for renewal, because so many people have, you know, called in to make sure they don't poison their family when they're doing canning, to double check what's that temperature, or have, you know, like me, called in and said, what's this weird fungal thing on my favorite tree that I would hate to lose, or have volunteered at the garden, or have been at a food pantry where there's a recipe demo happening, or any number of the many ways, or walked in one of the beautiful managed forests, experimental forests that you, so I think it's both that you demonstrate you do good things with the dollars, but also people have an individual personal experience and have benefited from those dollars. And so they want to vote to preserve that service. So it's great. Congratulations. Congratulations also on having a plan that goes one cycle beyond instead of just addressing what's right in front of you today. You know, obviously a permanent district would be most useful to you for your planning and the sustainability of the program. And once again, we'll just say that is part of what we do as service at Lane County, is provide the structure to collect the taxes and then get them out to the special districts. It does cost us money to do that, and create complexity on ballots, but a countywide district's a little easier. Every ballot gets one, so there's that. So congratulations, great work, and look forward to seeing you back early in the year to support moving this forward to the ballot in May. Thank you.
Anyone else? I need to be brief. We have 45 minutes left of business in 35 minutes. So if we could be a little brief, that would be helpful. Thank you.
I'll be brief. I just want to really say how much I appreciate the extension going into our rural communities as much as you have. We often hear that they don't feel the love and aren't getting the same kind of services that are provided within the city. So having those satellite offices outside the city center are really desperately needed, and I know really appreciated by our communities that are outside the metro area. I'm excited to see that you would be able to expand into the McKenzie Discovery Center. They're doing a lot of work out there on that building, and I would like to be able to draw people to it, and I know your service would do that. And then in Oak Ridge, of course, having folks up there know that you're available when it's a 45-minute drive plus into the community where they may just not otherwise come and seek your services. So being present in those rural communities is just, I think, a big highlight of your program.
Thank you, Commissioner. It was one of my goals growing up in Oak Ridge to, when I took this job, to expand, to do something positive for that community because it suffered so much since the 1980s when I was there. So I was very happy to open that satellite office. It's like a feather in my cap, personally.
Good work. Vice Chair?
Yes, I'll be brief. Was Tiffany Harper Monroe at this office for a while? No?
No, I don't.
She connected me with some people when Adams and, well, the whole board was working on the farm to table stuff. And there was a OSU extension here that we spoke with on the phone, and I wasn't sure if she was affiliated with the extension or not, but very helpful in different directions we should go and ideas. And so this is something that I definitely support. If you guys were here the entire time, you've heard there's some tough times here in Lane County. I mean, we're going to have to show support and go strong. But yeah, these are great things. And when our communities are struggling, the small town good feel forestry resources and food preserving and stuff, I mean, it goes a long way. So thank you.
Yes, I know we're short on time. You'll be back. I'll have some comments for you then, but thank you for all the stuff you're doing for the rural people. Certainly it brings a sense of community to a county this size of Vermont, makes us all feel like family, so good work. Appreciate you very much. And we have head nods to move forward for the levy. Looks like we do, so we'll continue on with that. So
Thank you very much.
All right, have a great day. Thanks again. All right, our next item is item C, our Lane County Clerk Introduction and Election Update. Mr. Mokryski.
Thank you, Chair. We're going to try to do this in 10 minutes.
There you go. That's the
less,
spirit.
But it's my pleasure. I get to introduce, even though Lauren did the work to recruit Tommy Gong to be here as our new Lane County Clerk. Tommy Gong was hired as Lane County's new county clerk in July, following a competitive national search. He succeeds former clerk Dina Dawson, who you all know, who left to take the role as elections director with the Oregon Secretary of State's office. Side note, turns out Lane County is an incubator for talent. We seem to lose really good people to the state, and thankfully, we also seem to recruit incredible people with great experience like Tommy. The county clerk, for those who are not familiar, and their staff are responsible for conducting elections, recording real property, issuing marriage licenses and domestic partnership registrations, and coordinating the Property Values Appeal Board. Tommy served as an election administrator for over 22 years and is a passionate advocate for building public trust in elections in our community. He served as California's Contra Costa County previously, in San Luis Obispo County and Stanislaus County in California. He was also a member of the Bipartisan Policy Center's Task Force on Elections and a member of the Election Workforce Advisory Council. He led the effort to form the Coalition of Bay Area Election Officials for neighboring counties to collaborate on building public trust in elections in shared media markets. You can see how Tommy's experience and background and knowledge is going to play so well here in Lane County with work that Dina Dawson, had begun to continue to advance so much of that work around building trust in our election system. I will also say that Mr. Gong was one of the first graduates of California's Professional Election Administrator Credentials in 2005 and completed the National Certified Election Registration Administrator Program in 2021. Okay, I'll take a breath and say we're so pleased to have Tommy here. He's going to give you a little bit more about himself and the November 4th election. Maybe he'll share with you a little more about his book on Bruce Lee that he wrote many years ago, if anyone has that interest. So without further ado, I'll introduce Tommy Gong to all of you.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. A real honor to be here before the Chair Lovell and fellow commissioners. A real honor. Thank you very much for this opportunity to serve as your next county clerk of Lane County. As we know, I oversee the deeds and records and also as the county archivist. So it's something that I'm looking very closely at in terms of our microfilm and our imaging of all of our vital records and historical records of our county. And then also very happy to start up doing the marriage ceremonies for couples that are married, getting married in the county. And I'm also going to make the plug for our scaremonies on Halloween, Friday the 31st. And so it's very popular, I will say. Already 15 out of the 20 spots are already filled. Wow. And so, and me being the only person that can perform these ceremonies, I will be very busy dressed as a pirate conducting these ceremonies. So when it comes to elections, my pledge to you is that I pledge to conduct elections in a neutral, nonpartisan, apolitical manner to the best of my team's ability with professionalism and respect. And that as we follow the rule of law conducting elections, we will be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and embracing 3 guiding principles to ensure fair and free elections. That is with continuous improvement, number 2, safety and security, and 3, transparency. If I could just highlight the transparency piece is so critical today with public trust in elections that it's something that I take with me from my career in elections, really understanding the need for the public to have a better awareness and understanding of the election process. So it's up to us election officials, let's say throughout the state of Oregon, to really state our case and to really educate the public of all of the processes and procedures, all of the checks and balances that are in the process that ensure the integrity of elections. And so with that in mind, I just wanted to give you a quick update to our upcoming election. Election day is 3 weeks away, being on in November, but it's not for all voters in Lane County. It's only involving about 87,000 voters only, including the city of Springfield, Dune City, Lane County Fire and Rescue, and Lane Fire Authority are the only 4 districts who have measures on the ballot. And so also for those who might be in one of these districts, today is a deadline to register to vote for this election. I will say for me, spending most of my career conducting elections in California, that I'm having to learn, some of the changes or the differences of the way elections are conducted here in Oregon. And so we do encourage for those who want to participate in the election to be sure that they register by the state. We don't have same-day registration, for example, in Oregon. So it's critical that voters who want to participate get registered in time. That could be 11:59 today at OregonVotes.gov to be sure that they can get registered. This Thursday, ballots will be in the mail for this November election. We will also have our 11 drop box 11 drop boxes. Only those boxes that are within those 4 jurisdictions will be open and be prepared for voters to return their ballots. If the voters decide to return their ballots through the Postal Service, we do encourage them to submit their ballots early. Just because of the way postmarking takes place with the Postal Service, we do encourage voters to get their ballots in early at a post office. But of course, they have the option of dropping them off at one of our drop boxes, and that helps saves on taxpayers' money with the postage returned, right? We also want to mention that observation is open to the public to observe any of our processes. Again, this is our transparency efforts so that the public can understand more and I can educate them directly to explain all of the processes and procedures that we have in place to ensure the ballots are secured and also counted appropriately. So with that in mind, if there are observers that are interested, to contact my office and we can set up a time for them to observe. We will also have our live stream cameras up, something that that Ms. Dawson had implemented here, which is a great transparency process, by the way. We'll have those going this Thursday as well. The live stream will be on for the public to see what's going on in our office, to all the critical areas when we're processing these ballots. And then also, though, at the same time, we have a May election that's happening. And of course, candidate filing, initial candidate filing is happening right now as we speak for 3 county commissioner seats and cities with primaries, and also precinct committee person positions are also subject to the ballot. So a lot going on, and again, I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity to serve.
Welcome, thank you. Member Board, we have a few minutes, but some people have their hands up to make some comments, Mr. Gong. Yes, Commissioner Trieger, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Welcome. It's great to meet you, but across the moat in front of the dais, so I look forward to a chance to actually meet you and chat a little. Love a good pun, so thanks for the scaramonies right out of the bat. That's awesome.
And the pirate costume.
Fantastic. I have one quick comment and then one question. The comment is, as you well know, because this is your profession, over the years, increasingly safety has become a concern, both safety at the boxes for folks dropping their ballots, so for the voters, for the integrity of the physical ballot itself, but also for election workers. And because you're new, you haven't heard, but all of us over the years have expressed our commitment to doing what we can to support the workers over in your division to ensure their safety as they're doing their work. So just wanted to make sure you knew that there is a history that all 5 of us have expressed, and I can't speak for all 5 of us, but I think I do, that carries forward under your tenure, because it is an increasingly, unfortunately, shouldn't be, but an increasingly challenging and targeted profession to be in. So appreciate you taking that on and joining us here at Lane County. My question is, with the ballot drop box being limited to being open in the districts that actually have something on the ballot, is that a new practice? Part 1, and part 2 is, will the box at the elections office itself be the exception to that?
Yes, so certainly the drop box at our office will certainly be open, as well as the one across the street from the public service building here. We'll have both of those positions open. That's a good question in terms of whether that would be, if that was common practice or not. I think in the matter of expediency for our sake, in terms of being, that knowing that the ballots will only be sent to the voters in those districts, that it would make sense that those would be the areas that will be open. It would be more cost efficient for us to be able to support, half the number of boxes or a third of the number of boxes being open than what they were, than all 21 that we have. So I think it's also just a consideration to the adding to or to doing what we can with the election costs.
I completely understand and appreciate the reasoning for it, and I support it. I'm just thinking from a sort of optics and messaging, if people are used to any drop box being open and they get to one and it's locked, there could be a narrative around that. So whether we need signage at the closed drop boxes or just some way we get the word out to people who might be used to being able to drop their ballots in more places than they will.
Oh, yes, thank you for that comment. That's a great suggestion. We do have the information in every vote by mail ballot packet about which boxes are going to be open. But we could do more too.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Gong. It is an honor, truly an honor to meet you. Chair, I just finished reading Bruce Lee, The Evolution of a Martial Artist by Tommy Gong. Such a good book for any martial artist interested in Lee and his system of fighting. I didn't write that. I didn't just finish reading it. I just actually ordered the book. But Mr. Gong, thank you for joining us here in Lane County. You bring your professional service here. Look forward to working with you. And on November 5th, you'll see me in your office with 3 dozen voodoo donuts, which is my practice.
Thank you very much. And when you receive that copy, I'm happy to autograph it as well as seal it with my Chinese chops. So I'm happy to do that.
All right. I didn't ask for that, but wonderful. Thank you.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you for coming to Lane County and being willing to run what is notably a complex election cycle here, generally speaking. We have a lot going on, but I'm also really excited about updating our area where marriages occur, which is outside of our offices, so we get to see that quite a bit. I missed not seeing that for some time when it went over to the clerk's location, but I hear it's back, and we'll be seeing you or running into you a little bit more than normal. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you. You do have big shoes to fill. We were all fans of Dina Dawson, and I feel like she left you in a great place. I mean, she brought a lot of transparency to Lane County elections, and I look forward to more of that, and hearing that that's one of your priorities is very exciting. So welcome aboard, and appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gong, welcome, Mr. Pirate Preacher. Appreciate you very much doing those scary ceremonies outside the office. We're short on time. I'd love to get to know you, but I just want to know if in your book, did you disprove the myth that Bruce Lee could pluck the wings off a fly as it flew by him?
Well, of course, you know he could do that.
Well, okay, there you go. I just want to make sure that was a proven fact and not just rumor. Well, again, welcome to Lane County. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, let's move along to our last item of the morning. We're going to move our announcements by Mr. Mokrzycki after our hearings at 1:30 time certain. We now have our discussion on the opportunity to update Beaches and Dunes coastal resource inventory maps and implementing lane code and rural comprehensive plan by our planning director, Amber Bell. And Kevin's also here too, Kevin Burbank.
Cold in the back.
It's cold up here too.
For sure.
Cold everywhere.
So thank you for sharing.
Need some heat.
We're looking forward to the hot information then.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. We know that time is short. The board has a busy agenda this morning, so we will try to make this presentation and request succinct. So I'm joined today by Kevin Gilbride, Senior Planner with Public Works, and also Rhiannon Bezor, Coastal Shores Specialist with Department of Land Conservation and Development, is joining us via Zoom in case there's questions. And so we learned that Dogami has produced new maps for beaches and dunes areas using modernized technology. And then DLCD approached us about an opportunity for technical assistance, both in the form of direct funding as well as assistance from DLCD staff. They've offered to lend their expertise to review our policies and codes and potentially assist with the adoption process if this is a direction that the board would like to take. So we're here before you today. When we learned about this opportunity, we wanted to place this before the board and request direction. And so just to orient us all, we thought that we would go over statewide planning goal 18 briefly. So that is the statewide planning goal for beaches and dunes that guides our comprehensive plan policies, inventory, and regulations. And it specifies that we must conserve, protect, where appropriate, develop, and where appropriate, restore the resources and benefits of coastal beach and dunes areas, and reduce the hazard to human life and property from natural and man-induced actions associated with these areas. So it's not only protection, preservation of beaches and dunes areas, but really about protecting life and property, because dunes can create hazards for structures and residential and other uses. And so the statewide planning goal specifies that an inventory must be conducted a comprehensive plan must be adopted with policies to achieve statewide planning goal 18, and then certain land use regulations must be adopted. There's prohibitions on certain beaches and dunes areas, including beaches, active foredunes, and other foredunes that are conditionally stable. And there's limited exceptions to that. And for all other areas, we're required to adopt regulations that ensure safety and certain measures like minimize development footprint areas and replanting of vegetation, ensure that dunes aren't reactivated. So just to give a couple of examples. And so we've done this work. The county did perform an inventory in the late 70s of beaches and dunes areas. We also adopted plan policies and adopted code. Lane Code Chapter 10, which applies outside, or at the time applied outside of urban growth boundaries countywide, was adopted first in 1980. Then Chapter 16, which now applies to areas outside of urban growth boundaries, was adopted in 1984. There were code amendments in 1987 to eliminate references to Chapter 10. The code hasn't been substantially amended since then. And similarly, the rural comprehensive plan policies haven't been updated in about 34 years. So the mapping is dated from the late 70s, and the code hasn't, and policies haven't been revised since. And so we have this opportunity to update the mapping as well as policies and code. DLCD has provided a model code for counties and cities across the state, but we'll talk about the opportunities and considerations a little bit more in a moment. There is an opportunity for us to engage with DLCD to take a look at the code for opportunities to amend that to fit our needs and special considerations in Lane County. And I'll turn it over to Kevin to take a look at the comparison of the mapping from the 70s and the new Delgamy mapping. Mainly here we want to highlight the more refined nature of Delgamy's new maps, where you can really drill down to a tax lot scale and discern which beaches and dunes classification applies, as opposed to our current process, which involves looking at very high-level scaled maps and staff needing to go out on site to determine whether or not hazards exist.
And Kevin, would you mind explaining the acronyms for the public again for us as you go through that?
Which ones?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Delgamy is the Department of, now I'm blanking myself. It's Geology and Mineral Industries, and DLCD's Department of Land Conservation and Development, and I think we talked about the Coastal Resource Management Plan, which is the CRMP, and I think we may have mentioned ORS, which is Oregon Revised Statutes, and LC means Lane Code.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
This slide is actually supposed to show a side-by-side of the old mapping, which is misquoted as being from 1975 there. It was between 1975 and 1980 when the mapping was derived, and we adopted it in 1981. You can see that it doesn't cover all of Lane County, which is not super accurate because the coast goes along the whole length of Lane County's western edge. And you would see if the image was there, which it is in my PowerPoint, but not in this one for some reason. The new mapping covers the entire coast, which is more accurate and easier to implement because it's much better derived mapping using modern processes. Next slide. So I'm going to go through just a few slides really quick that show a side-by-side of the old mapping versus the new mapping. And on this slide, you can clearly see the difference in accuracy of the new mapping versus in comparison to the old mapping. The old mapping has pretty much everything drawn with the same weight of pen, so it's difficult to determine where a beach and dune designation begins, ends, and where a road begins and ends. And in some cases, boundary lines cover most of a tax lot. making it difficult to determine whether an entire property is in a designation or out of a designation or neither. And the new mapping is accurate to a fine scale that can be zoomed in to a very close view, providing us the ability to know exactly where a designation begins and ends without really leaving the office. Next slide. And here you can see again the increased accuracy in mapping that the new maps provide, and can see how much easier it is to determine whether a property is in open sand or in an older stabilized dune or a wetland. So on the original 1975 mapping on the left, you can see there's letters, OS, with lines pointing towards specific areas, but there's no specific information in the inter areas of what those designations are. But if you look at the same map on the right side, it tells you exactly where and what a property is mapped in. And next slide. And much like the previous slides, this comparison shows the ease of understanding the new map that the new mapping will provide, both staff and public, because if and when we do adopt this map, it will be added to our public GIS resource, so property owners will be able to look and see exactly where they are in a geological formation, just like staff can. These Mylars, the left side 1975 mapping, are public information and on our public GIS, but reading them is difficult. It's just, yeah, I just really wanted to drill down the increased accuracy of it and the benefit that will provide to the public and to staff. We'll save time, the public will have better information, and we may be able to avoid an entire application type, which is where we do a site visit to determine what kind of dune formation properties are in, and this mapping may or likely will lead to us not having to do that in the future.
So some considerations associated with this project. Thank you. So this project, if we receive direction from the board to work on this, then it would involve public outreach and public hearings. So the full public process, public notices, it would come before the Planning Commission for recommendation to the board, and then ultimately to the board for decision. It would entail amending the rural comprehensive plan to surgically adopt the beaches and dunes map, because that is part of our overall coastal inventory currently, and taking a look at amending policies and code. So again, that would come before the board. We would want to take a closer look at the maps if we begin this project in earnest. We've looked at them at a high level. Kevin's looked at some specific areas. We would want to take a look at the differences of the existing maps and proposed maps to narrow in on if additional properties would be brought into beaches and dunes areas, and then have public outreach around that. Certainly, again, we would be mailing public notices to anyone affected by the project. As Kevin mentioned, if we were to proceed with the new mapping and model code that implements that, then that might have the effect of simplifying the process, because we would have more refined data and may not necessarily need to require a type 1 hazards checklist that we currently require. That's about $1,700 for an applicant, and it takes several weeks because staff goes out to see if hazards are present on site. So eliminating about a $1,700 step. Looking at the draft model code that's in your packet, it does include a bit of a change of process that would require a development permit and a type 2 procedure with some limited exceptions. So we'd want to take a close look at that. Our intention would be to draft code that would create a simple and as streamlined of process as possible. So while it is proposed as a type 2 process, we are also obligated to comply with House Bill 3197 to adopt clear and objective code standards, as you'll hear about later today. And so we would want to engage with DLCD to determine how we could take a look at that to adopt a clear and objective code pathway as we're proposing to do already for our existing code, and then make that work for the new mapping. As well, we would want to take a look at the model code and tailor that for Lane County and consider what existing regulations we've already adopted. So with that, we are happy to answer any questions and are requesting board direction on whether to proceed to let DLCD know that the county is interested in this project, and we would proceed to work with them.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. A great presentation. I love this stuff. It's really interesting. Apart from frequenting the area, I love looking at maps, and especially when you take a pen stroke is what? How big on the map? This big on the map, but that big in reality.
So
I'm going to come out in favor of alternative one, which is to initiate the process, because a number of things. You mentioned eliminating a $1,700 step in the applications, implementing clear and objective code standards. But there are some caveats involved. For instance, I'm looking at the model, the Dune overlay model language that you're looking at putting before the public for approval. And it does state that it's intended to be used as an overlay zone and should be modified as needed to fit with applicable zoning codes. I guess that's a matter of discussion as to exactly what that means, but I think it means that that it has to comply with zoning codes that are in place and codified already. Is that a good assumption on that? Of course, there's a lot of time to discuss that.
Yeah, my assumption is that we will want to take a look at our existing codes on the books and do a close comparison of the model code with the existing codes and determine what's required to be adopted and to tailor the model code to Lane County. And I'm not sure if Rhiannon has anything to add there, but I'd welcome her comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the model code is designed to be fully customizable. So far, we've worked with Tillamook and Coos County and the city of Bandon on adopting the model language, and each of them have, tailored it to their own specific needs. They have primarily done kind of a repeal and replace, but pulled in elements from their existing code that work well for them, and then adjusted things as needed, especially for clear and objective standards. So it's really just designed to be a template, and then you can pull as much or as little as you'd like, and we can offer that technical guidance on how to do that and provide suggestions from DLCD, but it's really whatever is comfortable and appropriate for the county.
Thanks for that clarification. That is essentially what I said in my stumbling and imperfect way. But so thank you. That is what I presumed. So working with the cheesemakers, I love it. We're sharp. The other thing I'd like to say is that there are some things to look at as we go along. This is designed to streamline, essentially, how we move forward with both development and preservation in the dunes. Both are very an important element. Both are important elements. But for instance, trees 8 inches diameter breast height, typically calls for less than a 25% reduction in those for the overhead canopy. But cottonwood trees are used a lot in dune areas for stabilization. And cottonwood trees can grow to 8 inches diameter breast height in about 5 years. So if you go on a sabbatical and come back, the cottonwood trees may have grown to that height. So I don't know if you have any provisions for type of tree and speed of growth. Once again, that's not a discussion for today, but understanding that some things kind of slide in without us really wanting them to be there, that can be inhibiting rather than streamlining. But I have great confidence, and I'm going to miss you. But not from a great distance. You'll love the city of Eugene.
Thank you. It's been a great privilege to serve.
I just have a question that I'm going to get asked is, if I'm going to go and build something or make an addition onto something, is this going to simplify or complicate the process for the constituent?
The goal will be to simplify.
Simplify.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will be taking a close look at the model code with that lens. And there are some differences based on a preliminary review. We're seeing there are already some differences. One that jumped out to us is that it may eliminate that first hazard checklist step. It may add a type 2 development permit requirement for certain development and require a geotechnical hazard report. I will note that in many areas of the coast, in talking with our building official, there's already a geotech report requirement. So it would change the time at which a geotech report would be required earlier in the process and change some of the things that we need to address, essentially driving the design as opposed to them coming in later on a project. So there are some differences, but again, we would be engaging with DLCD to take a close look through the lens of making things simpler, streamlining wherever we can, adding a clear and objective code standard, and seeing how we can tailor it to Lane County.
Okay. Well, Amber, that's why you're going to be missed. I'm sure you'll do a great job in Eugene, but you will be truly missed here in Lane County.
Thank you. It's been a great privilege.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that, Rhiannon, when you had mentioned that you've had work with dunes development like in the Bandon area, I'm hoping that the lessons that we learned, that's a lot of development going on there, very close to the ocean, golfing, recreation, all that. I'm hoping that what we learned and made mistakes off with down there, that information would glean in and help us be a little bit smoother in this transition. So that's what I'm looking forward to. It looks to me like you do have some head nods. We're supposed to direct staff to initiate the process for a new ordinance. I'm looking at all head nods. So I think that's a good direction to go. I mean, after all 34 years, it doesn't seem like it was that long, does it? But it's probably due. So thank you for letting us know that. And thank you again for the presentation. Again, we'll miss you, and Godspeed and fair seas, as they say in the Navy. All right. Thank you very much. All right, we are a little bit behind schedule, but we're going to catch right up. We're going to, before recess, read us into executive session. The Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. The session is to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations and is held to pursuant ORS 192.6602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video, record, or otherwise record an executive session, and verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision may be made in executive decision. We will be having our executive session upstairs in the Board of County Commissioners conference room. We will return to public session today at 1:30 in Harris Hall. We are recessed.